Hi, everyone. If you're just joining us, welcome. Welcome to our webinar, Quantum Girls, Resources and Activities to Celebrate World Quantum Day, which is coming up on April 14th. We hope you get inspired by some of the activities and resources that we share today and lead some of your own quantum-related programming on World Quantum Day on the 14th and maybe year-round. My name is Amanda Sullivan, Senior Researcher at the National Girls Collaborative Project. I'm joined by Brenda Britch from the National Girls Collaborative Project, who you'll see in the chat, moderating, helping keep track of all your questions, putting in tons of awesome links and resources. So you'll be hearing from her a lot today. And we're also joined by some wonderful speakers who I will introduce in just a few minutes. A housekeeping notes, we ask that you stay muted right now, but there will be time for audience Q&A at multiple points in our webinar today. And we do encourage you to use that chat to ask any questions, comments, share ideas. Let us know if you're doing anything for World Quantum Day. If this is your first time joining us for a National Girls Collaborative Project event or webinar, I'm so excited. I think you picked a really fun one to join for your first time. But let me just introduce us briefly so you know who we are and how you can stay connected with us. We're an organization dedicated to supporting and creating STEM experiences that are as diverse as the world we live in. And so to do that, we create a lot of different resources to help our networks grow and thrive. We create regular webinars like this one on a variety of topics related to STEM and equity. We have a monthly newsletter, which is your first place to learn about our events, resources, and research. And all of this and more is available on our website, ngcproject.org, which I'm sure Brenda will pop into the chat if you'd like to learn more about any of these resources or join us for our next webinar. But the reason we're all here today is to talk about quantum. And if you're here and you're wondering what quantum is, that's awesome too. And we will get into that and we will talk all about that. But we're going to be sharing about our project Quantum Girls, which is an out of school time quantum curriculum developed especially for middle school aged girls. It was developed by us at the National Girls Collaborative Project in partnership with Montana State University Applied Quantum Core through support from the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory and the National Science Foundation Engines Program. And we're joined today by Susie Taylor, who is going to help us kick off our webinar and tell us a little bit more about MSU and their connection to quantum. Susie is the director of the Science Math Resource Center at MSU, which is a STEM outreach center. Susie, thank you so much for everything you've done to kind of spearhead this quantum work. And I'd love to just turn it over to you now to say a few words.
All right, well, awesome. I'm super excited about today. And it's really an honor to be able to share this great work of the National Girls Collaborative Project on behalf of MSU and MSU's Q Core. So you might be kind of wondering, quantum in MSU, quantum in Montana. I thought Montana was cows and glaciers and John Dutton from Yellowstone. But I wanted to tell you a super quick story. It's kind of a new story to me about why Montana and MSU's Q Core are at the forefront of all this quantum research. So there was this guy named Ralph Hutchison. He grew up in Havre, Montana. It's a really small town way up by Canada. He graduated from MSU here in Bozeman in the 1950s. And he played a key role in the creation of the world's first laser beam. We kind of take lasers for granted. I mean, they're in cat toys and at rock concerts, but they really have revolutionized science from the smallest quantum particles to the scale of the universe. So when Ralph came back to Montana, he started a company that made the world's highest quality single crystal laser materials. And basically from that company, along with research at MSU and other entrepreneurs in Montana, this ecosystem has evolved right here in the state that is all about optics and photonics and quantum. And I think it's just really cool that this guy from a very small town in Montana kind of helped make this revolution in science. So I'm just really excited to hear the Quantum Girls presentation, and I'm grateful to the researchers at Q Core. for funding the program and just understanding how important it is to inspire our next generation of scientists. So thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks, Susie. That was a new to me story too. That's awesome just to learn that history and that connection. And we're excited and grateful to Q Corps as well. So let's jump in and frame this Quantum Girls project, and then you will get the chance to hear from two amazing Montana educators with their experiences implementing some of these activities in their settings. But I promised that if you weren't sure what quantum was, we would help kind of define that before we get into all of the activities. As we introduce it to our middle schoolers in the curriculum, we explain that quantum is an area of STEM that studies things that are very, very, very small. It focuses on understanding the smallest objects in nature and how they interact to make the world the way it is. Quantum science itself is not new, but newly growing quantum fields and industries are revolutionizing many aspects of our everyday lives. So, starting quantum education early during these K 12 years, we're focused on middle school here, can really help provide a larger, more diverse pool of students with the opportunity to learn about quantum, get interested in quantum, and get interested in STEM more broadly. So that's a little bit of the background of the why Quantum Girls. We developed it to meet that need of introducing youth to quantum early on in fun, hands-on, and engaging ways. We focused on youth around 11 to 14 when developing the activities we'll share a bit about today, specifically designed for out of school time settings. So, after school clubs, camps, enrichment programs, things of that nature. And you'll hear more about the specific settings our two guest speakers today can tell you about. We developed 10 1 hour modules, plus a bunch of supplementary resources, including resources for families that might want to continue learning about quantum or take it to the next level. And one just key element that is, worth pointing out about the curriculum we developed is it's designed to spark girls' interest and identification in STEM, and it's not designed to teach or evaluate girls on any specific skills or content. The central goals of this curriculum, which is different from other STEM curriculum, other STEM programs out there, and different from many school day programs, is exposure, to expose girls to quantum related concepts and careers, to spark their interest and help foster their STEM identity and how they see themselves as a competent, confident STEM person. There's a lot of STEM learning and skills that come along for the ride in all of that. That's just not the central goals of our design for this program. Each of the modules contain these different elements, icebreakers, concept introduction through video clips and explanations from their educators. Later on, we'll share some resources that you can use in your own settings, and we've compiled a few video clips that you might be interested in sharing with your youth or viewing yourselves. And it really focused on hands-on activities, and we'll hear from our two educators in a few minutes about some of the favorite hands-on activities that their girls enjoyed. And then the other unique piece of the curriculum is each module had a career connection. So, learning how these hands on activities and projects they were doing connect to real world careers and things that folks are doing connected to quantum. And they also featured role model moments, we called them, short clips of women talking about their work in different quantum related fields. Here is just a little sneak peek at some of what these activities looked like. The first module starts off with conceptualizing the scale that we're thinking about. So it's cutting papers to get to see how small an atom is, and then thinking about, whoa, quantum is looking even smaller, subatomic. So what does that mean in terms of the challenges? Why do we care about things that are that small? And wrapping your mind around that. We've integrated a lot of activities that focus on art. So one of the activities is creating your own comic strip or graphic novel to convey different quantum related topics or ideas in creative ways. And we were inspired and also included this Quantum 101 comic from NASA. And if you haven't seen that, we can pop that in the chat. It's a good, fun resource that you could use. And they have a black and white printable. So it's a great, print and go resource for World Quantum Day if you just need something kind of simple. We did an activity with thaumatropes. Let us know in the chat if you've done this before, because that's a great STEM activity that we actually found out that many educators were doing to teach other concepts not related to quantum. But we use that as an example of superposition. It's something where there's an image on one side, a different image on the other, and then when you spin it together quickly, the two images are kind of both seen at once. And we can pop a quick link if you want to try that to a YouTube video that shows you how to do that. We had girls writing encrypted messages while they were talking about quantum cryptology and lots more. And I would like you to hear that lots more part from our amazing educators, not from me. So I just want to take a couple minutes to say a few short words about Hilary and Jennafer, who are joining us today, and then I will turn it over to Jennafer to kick us off and share about her experience. So Hilary Lozar always had a deep affinity for science and astronomy growing up and became an elementary educator to help foster joy and excitement in those fields in her students. After a long career teaching, she left the world of public education and joined her local Boys and Girls Club to become STEM coordinator for 3 clubs in the Flathead Valley. She's brought many of her own original materials to her position and has greatly enjoyed serving her community more widely as a STEM resource for multiple districts. We're also joined by Jennafer Day. Jennafer has a long background in teaching and coaching. She taught high school math and coached wrestling and softball for 7 years before moving to Montana in 2017. Upon moving to Montana, Jennafer began teaching middle school math and science at Montfortin Middle School in Bozeman. In addition to core classes, she has also had the opportunity to teach several elective courses, including robotics, coding, graphic design, forensics, and makerspace. I would love to be one of Jennafer's students. We are just so thrilled to have both Hilary and Jennafer here to share their experiences. So without further ado, I will pull down my slides and turn it over to you, Jenna, to kick us off.
All right, thank you for the introduction. So throughout my presentation, I'm just going to kind of go give an introduction to each of the modules that that we went through as a group, kind of why we wanted to do Quantum Girls here at Montfortin, and then some of the takeaways that myself and the girls all got from the 10-week program. And I'll just start by saying that I wish it was longer and I had more time with the girls. I enjoyed every minute of the 10 modules, and the girls did as well. So it was a really positive experience for everyone involved here at Montfortin Middle. So just a kind of why we did the Quantum Girls here. So kind of on a personal level, as I was reflecting on my own science journey, I realized that I'm in a very fortunate position here at Montfortin currently, where we have 3 female science teachers. In fact, our entire department is female. But as I kind of reflected on my schooling, all the way through college, I never had a female science teacher. So as someone that was entering, thinking about teaching science never even really crossed my mind, because I couldn't picture myself in that role because I had never had a role model of that nature. So I think it's really important that girls see that there can be professional science girls, and that can be a career option for them, which is something that I didn't have growing up. So that was one of the personal motivations. And then for our school, a motivation. So we're very close to MSU. And in fact, a lot of our students have parents that are faculty or staff or somehow involved with MSU. So through that connection, a lot of our girls go to MSU summer camps or involved some way with STEM programs through MSU. So to me, this was just a natural extension of that connection with the university and just extending the girls' knowledge on what they already have. And with that, I think a lot of our girls are professionally driven and motivated students. And I really see them as a large piece of our future leaders. So I wanted to continue to expose them to different options once they get into the workforce or as they start to think about potential careers. And when we first started, just asking them, you know, what are some careers that you've thought of? Like engineer came up and, you know, things in the science field came up, which I don't know if I would have had that same response when I was in 8th grade, just based on my experiences. So I kind of wanted to provide that for the girls. And so that's why we opted to join the QuantumGirls STEM Club. So just a little bit about how we, oh, sorry. Did my slides pop off?
No, you're good. We can see it. It's the Quantum Girls at Montfort slide.
Okay. So here at Montfort, we just kind of advertised it, posters around school, in our school newsletter, just kind of open it up to all 6th through 8th graders that are in our school, and looked at the interest that we got. One thing that we were up against, it was during our girls' basketball season. So because we were after school and that was also after school, it limited our participation a little bit. But we did end up with 9 girls that were super motivated and super engaged. And so it was a really fun experience with those 9. We met after school for about an hour, 1 time per week. So then that gave some time in between the sessions to kind of digest what we had learned and come back with questions and things like that. We did make it through all 10 modules. And then at the end, we had a project showcase where staff, parents, some staff from MSU kind of came, and that was really cool to see the girls just kind of take ownership and pride and it was neat to see that, like, how many people there didn't know anything about quantum. So just the pride that they took in being able to educate adults about what they had learned was really cool. So the 10 modules, just kind of giving a brief overview of what the program entails. The first module is about what is quantum. So kind of an underlying idea of what quantum is and how quantum is in our lives, even though we may not recognize it as quantum. So things like she mentioned earlier with lasers and self-driving cars and things like that we might not necessarily relate to quantum, but I think that was good for the girls to see, I do know what this is, and kind of make those connections there. I think out of that first module, the most powerful thing was the paper cutting activity, which she kind of discussed a little bit earlier. But basically what that activity is they take a strip of paper and they cut it in half and just continue to cut each of those smaller pieces in half as many times as they can. And a lot of our girls were able to get, you know, somewhere between 5 and 8 cuts and thought that paper was pretty small. But then when we kind of dug in a little deeper and said, well, in order to get to the size of an atom, you would have to cut that 31 times. And they're trying to figure out like how they're going to get their scissors and to continue cutting, and also the amount of that it had shrunk from the beginning in 5 times. So now if we're going to cut it 31 times, just how tiny that was. So I think that was a good kind of starting point so that the girls could realize like just how small we're talking. So then the second week, we looked at quantum science and technologies. So this is where that comic book came in that she highlighted earlier. And a lot of our girls in this module kind of clung to that space travel and that NASA idea of how we can use quantum to further space travel. And I was really impressed with their creativity in their comic books, everything from creating a comic about a self-driving car that took over the world to how we can use it to get to space and things like that. So it was a pretty cool activity. The girls really enjoyed allowing their creativity to kind of take over and knowing that there really wasn't a right answer, but just kind of interpreting it in their own way was kind of powerful for them. In the third module, we started talking about quantum computing. So they looked at what a quantum computer looks like. And there was this analogy of spinning a coin. So if you look at a coin, we see it as a heads or tails, but quantum computing sees it as a constant evolving. It can be many things. It can be heads and tails at the same time. It can be a lot of different things at one time. And so that was a really good analogy to help the girls see why quantum computing is so much superior to the Chromebooks that we use every day. And just the process that and the speed at which quantum computing can happen compared to our slow school Chromebooks or whatever the case is there. So that was again a good kind of connection for the girls to relate to quantum a little bit better. The activity that we did with this one was the thaumatropes. So again, that idea that things can happen in two states at once. And I have a picture of one of our examples later on in my slideshow, so I can explain that a little bit more. But again, I think this activity really drove home to the girls what makes quantum computing unique. And some of them really, throughout the modules, I think different girls gravitated towards different parts of quantum. So there's a couple girls that really enjoyed the quantum computing part and can see themselves kind of extending in that area. So that was kind of neat. Module 4 looked at science fiction related to quantum. So it brought up some popular movies that involve quantum in some way or science fiction in some way. And just kind of, again, making quantum relevant to the girls and relatable to the girls. And then they made their own science fiction movie posters. So some of them were kind of extension of the comic book from Module 2. So, one of our girls made a movie about a cat that shot lasers out of its eyes to take over the world. And someone else made a poster about a self-driving car that was like Superman on steroids and solved all the world's problems and things like that. So again, just an opportunity for them to show their creativity and how quantum was meaningful to them in that module. Then module 5 was looking at how arts are connected to quantum. So this idea of superposition art and how you can look at one picture and see two things at once. So we went through some examples of that, and then the girls created their own art pieces. They had the option to either replicate one or create their own, and most chose to create their own. And so again, it was really neat to see that creativity come through and see their brains kind of working in two ways at once, much like a quantum computer. So that was a fun activity as well. Then module 6, the girls looked at why quantum matters to me. So in this one, there was a video on voter fraud and how quantum can be used to create cryptic codes that only the voter can use to try to alleviate the problem of voter fraud. So that was, again, it was right around when we ended up doing it. It was, we had like a school election and things like that. So it was pretty relevant for the girls to be able to think about, like, how can we prevent somebody from casting 2 votes, or even if it's just in our school election, but then on a bigger level in our presidential election and things like that. And then also during that module, they created some secret codes of their own. So they partnered up and each made their own secret code and made a message for their partner to try to figure out. And some of them needed some hints along the way. Some of them were able to figure out some 2- and 3-letter words and kind of start breaking the code that way. So that was neat to see. Some of them went like super detailed with their codes. And then at the end, I just had them on the board. I'll show you a picture in a minute, but we just made a quote, "Quantum is really cool," or something like that. And each of them wrote that in their own code. So it was kind of neat to see the comparisons and how different each of the codes were there. And then the module 7, they started exploring careers in quantum a little bit more. So each of them chose a career and kind of made a job advertisement for that particular career. So I think this is where it really became real for the girls. Like all throughout the modules, they had heard from professionals, and they had seen how quantum could be used. But I think once they started digging into those actual jobs and seeing what do I need in order to be in this field, and that it was attainable for someone like them, or that they knew people that had similar schooling, I think that made it really attainable for the girls to see that maybe I could do this someday. So that was a cool project for them, just to see what is available in quantum now. And then we also had a discussion about some of these careers might not even be around when you get a job, and there might be completely different ones as well. But just recognizing that this field is constantly evolving, and the more you can stay ahead of that curve, the more successful you can be in that career, or the more options you have within that career. And then the final 3 sessions were a final project. So they kind of came up with their own way to culminate their own learning. So some of them made skits or little movies. Some of them made slideshows. Some of them made posters. One of them had an idea of like a crime board and showing the connections between all the things in quantum, whether it's careers or just different subcategories of quantum. So just seeing the different ways that they interpreted all the material and kind of made it their own was really cool. And then what I talked about before, also just the pride in knowing something that adults don't know, and just that something that they thought was really hard and really unattainable, now realizing that they do know a lot about it, and they can continue to grow in that, was really powerful for those last couple modules. And it was neat to see their creativity and just see how they process the information in so many different ways. Even though they all went through the same 10 modules, each of them got something different from the 10 modules at different points. So these are just some pictures. So this is the cryptology. So here are all their different codes. You can see some are much more complex than others, but they had a fun time trying to break each other's codes. So that was fun. Here they are doing their superposition art. So these are some kind of, on the top left and bottom right, are kind of some of the examples that they were given in the beginning to go off of, where like if you look at the picture at the bottom right, it could be seen as a duck, but if you kind of turn your head, maybe a rabbit, and the duck's mouth are now its ears. So just that kind of idea of things could be 2 things at once, and just opening up their mind to see things as they might not first appear, was pretty cool. And then here they are again working on their superposition art. So just to finish up some takeaways that we had from the program, I think some of the highlights, just the inquisitive nature of the girls, and just I kind of felt like I slighted them a little bit because they always had questions that I couldn't answer right away, but it was always, I don't know, let's find out together. So kind of that journey of finding things out together, and just how many questions they had was neat. And then, like I talked about before, just the pride that the girls had and the confidence that they gained throughout the courses was really cool to see, especially at the middle school level, where sometimes self-esteem is a little bit low. So this was good to see those girls kind of blossom and really grow in their self-esteem. Some of the favorite activities of our girls. So here's an example of one of the thaumatropes. So the jar on the front, and then you had the fish on the back. And as you spin that, it appears that those 2 are blending together, and the fish is in the jar. So that was a cool activity for the girls. And they really enjoyed the movie posters. And then also there was, in one of the modules, there was a series of videos that explained quantum for different ages. So we kind of started with the elementary school video and discussed that, and then moved on to the middle school and the high school, and kind of worked up a little bit through the ages, and just seeing kind of their knowledge grow throughout those videos was cool to see. And then the final project, I think they far exceeded my expectations on that, and just the amount of knowledge that they were able to not only gain, but then also share with others, was really cool. And then just finally, the benefits for the girls. So like I've talked about, the confidence that they can do difficult things, I think is really powerful, especially as some of them are going through middle school or getting ready to enter high school. Just knowing that they can challenge themselves and be successful is really powerful. Also, like just the exposure to cutting edge careers. So they're already a step ahead of girls that didn't do this program, or males or females that don't know what quantum is. This already puts them a step ahead of careers that, like I said earlier, might not even exist now, but will be around when they start their careers. And then the third takeaway was that just realizing that quantum is in their lives every day, and just realizing all the areas that it is in their lives. And the final benefit was those role model moments. So these were videos or interviews with professionals in the quantum field. So I think it was really good for the girls to kind of see how the things that they're applying can be a career, or can be something that they can do for the rest of their lives, and that there are already women that are doing those things. I think that was really powerful for them. Like I kind of started my presentation with, this is something that I didn't have when I was in middle school, even just as a science teacher, let alone someone in such a cutting edge career as quantum is. So I think that was really powerful for them to see that they wouldn't be the first. Those barriers have already been broken down, and they can just continue to lead that charge. Was really good for them. So that is all I have. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Jenna. This was awesome to see highlights, the pictures of the girls and the projects, and then just a lot of those benefits that you observed as an educator. I was just really struck by the points you made about confidence and self-esteem, like translatable beyond STEM, just necessary skills. I know that you have to rush because you teach during the school day and after school. So we are just so grateful that you slipped this in. And most of the questions that have been coming into the chat are bigger project related questions. So I don't want to keep you from your students who need you. But thank you so much, Jenna, for being here. You all can continue putting questions in, and maybe Hilary or other people from the team, even if it's specific to Jenna, might be able to answer some of those questions as well. But why don't we turn it over to you, Hilary, and then we'll touch on some of these bigger questions. Keep them coming. This is great. We're keeping track of them. We'll have plenty of time for discussion with Hilary and all of us on the Quantum Girls team. Everyone's just clapping for you, Jenna, in the chat. I'm glad you get to see that before you log off right away. Whenever you're ready, Hilary, the floor
Alrighty.
is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jenna, for setting me up. This is a nice transition. Let me start sharing real quick. Can you all hear me all right? I'm hoping so. I know my internet in here is a little shaky. I'm at my Boys and Girls Club. And they're starting to log on to the internet and starting to get their stuff ready for the day. So, all right, hopefully this works. Can you all see my slides?
Yes.
Hoping. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. My name is Hilary Lozar. I work currently as the STEM coordinator for 3 local Boys and Girls Clubs between Ronan, Polson, and St. Ignatius, Montana. All 3 are very small, but we make the most with what we've got. And a lot of times that means doing a lot with very little. So I normally go through slide presentations like this a lot too fast. I'm trying to slow myself down today. I can teach in front of kids all day long with no problems at all, but you put me in front of a few adults and I start to get nervous and I start to speak way too quickly and stumble. So I'm going to try to slow myself down today, but if I do finish too quickly, it just leaves more time for questions at the end. So we'll get started here. All right, so I was born and raised in Montana. I'd always been completely obsessed with everything science. I took as many science classes as I could throughout my own schooling. And as Jenna kind of mentioned, we live in sort of a rural area. Montana is not super duper progressive when it comes to public educators. You notice a trend in that your elementary school teachers are mostly female. Then you get up into the maths and sciences and it's mostly male. I was lucky in that I had a wonderful high school math teacher who was female, and she really encouraged me to do everything I could in advanced math. And that kind of sparked a love of believing in myself in math. And I think that for me was a really important turning point in my schooling. I also had a wonderful female gifted and talented teacher that allowed us to choose our own way of learning throughout high school. And that also encouraged me to find my own identity within what I was already good at and push myself further towards things that I was interested in, but not proficient or expert at. So I really appreciate life where I could carry myself forward in STEM with a strong STEM identity. To do that, I attended MSU to get my master's degree, mostly online through our local tribal college. I also have a degree from University of Montana. The two schools are rival. So for both sides at Broad. Student who go for cats or grizz, and I can say both. I don't have to cheer for one or the other. So once I was able to and I was in the classroom and I created a STEM career option for myself in my school with some support from my principal and administrators. So I did that for about 5 years before post-COVID funding crunches started trickling down and my district made the tough decision to cut my STEM program. So I left the school and joined my Boys and Girls Club here, which has been a fantastic new adventure for me. I get to do everything I loved about my old job with kind of setting my own hours and making my own goals and doing things like this, which I didn't have a chance to do in my other job. So happy to be here and I'm happy to be working with the Boys and Girls Club and working with Susie a couple summers ago in Bozeman enabled me to be part of this pilot program for which I'm grateful. I worked in the it was for the 6-week Think Susie Experience for Teachers program. So I got to know some of the foundational aspects of quantum through that program and was super excited to be able to apply what I'd learned at the Quantum Lab into this curriculum. Let's see what else I wanted to say. I'm always been a science nerd. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. I want to encourage my science-minded students to be proud of their science nerdiness as well. And astronomy happens to be my particular love in the sciences. As I apologize, we've got a couple kids here on spring break. You can probably hear them through the door. That kind of brings me to my last point about myself that I'm very proud of. I see myself as a STEM mentor for a lot of female students. And as I mentioned before, my 2 STEM mentors growing up made sure that I was able to become one myself. And so I see that as sort of a cycle that I can be a part of. And if I can mentor informally and formally with some of my students here, I can see them becoming the next wave of STEM mentors for kids who look up to them. So we're in a small rural community where that sort of commitment to students' lives makes a big difference. And I would love to be able to start a cycle for mentorship here. As far as Quantum Girls go, the curriculum was amazing, very, very user-friendly. Some highlights from my experience. The kids loved all the art experiments or activities that were included in each lesson. Each module has some sort of hands-on part to it, and you can see some of these pictures here. Their second favorite thing to do was creating secret codes. So if it wasn't art, they were writing to me in code. And I have a few notes in my office now from the Quantum Girls written in our class secret code. They voted rather than create individual codes or partner codes, they wanted to do a whole class code so they all could read each other's messages. So we went ahead and did a full class code. And that was just really cute to see all these girls writing each other's notes in classes. And for once, it's sanctioned. It's not illicit activity as it was in middle school when I was young. And also they take great pride in being able to not just decipher the codes quickly, but write almost fluently in them by the end of a few experiences. let's see, the girls asked so many questions. Jenna definitely mentioned that as well. There were times where I would look at the clock and be like, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm sorry, write them down. We'll look them up next time. I can't answer this right now. We've got to go. We ran ourselves out of time almost constantly. And those questions were really what did it. They'd take a question and then kind of did what I was calling the quantum branch to it. They'd take their question and then analyze not just the answer I gave them, but another what if. Then that would bring us to more what ifs and more what ifs. And it's ended up being fractals of questions. So that was really exciting to see how engaged and curious these girls became. They also thought that quantum could be applied in ways that I never would have considered. They're so creative at finding ways that they would put quantum into their daily lives. Their creativity was astonishing and very exciting for me. And it kind of helped me remember, like, this is what it's like to think like a kid again. So it was beneficial all around. It got me encouraged to kind of get myself out of the rut teachers kind of confine themselves in, where, you know, you're supposed to be the expert. Rather than that, I started thinking about questions that I would ask as well. So we all were learning together. I mentioned the secret codes already, definitely a highlight. And the relationships that we were able to build through this program were really valuable, especially always comfortable teaching, and I'm still not always that's not my favorite group to go work with all the time, but I found through this small group setting and through the concepts that we were talking about, our relationships got so much stronger, and the girls got more and more eager to come every week. And they were always excited to see me. And this was a group I really struggled with getting to know. They were very closed off when I first got to know them and invited them into this space. So our relationships really blossomed, and I've gotten really close with some of these girls, which was some kind of a surprise to me. They are a little prickly at times, as any one of you who've had kids probably knows, or teaches in middle school. Middle schoolers can be a little unpredictable and a little bit scary if you don't, if you're not really comfortable in that setting. So we were really glad to get to know each other towards the end. And then sort of along the same vein as their creativity, their personal twists that they'd put on their ideas with the quantum overall concepts were really intriguing. One example was I sort of had a jock in the group. She didn't talk about anything but basketball. All she wanted to do was play basketball, talk about basketball. Wasn't really thrilled to be here in the first few sessions, but we started talking about nanobots in one of the modules for some reason. And she got so excited to create and code an imaginary nanobot basketball coaching program that she said you could watch the game on a microscope, you'd program the bots what plays to run, and then you could go and replicate those plays on the court. And I just thought that was the coolest way to put quantum technology into basketball, of all things. And it was right around the beginning of March when she mentioned this. So it was just in time for March Madness. Our challenges we always face 2.5 to 3 hours tops after school. And I was meeting with them for an hour a week, and then other scheduling conflicts came up, also coincided with some sports seasons. And so the time and the consistency were really difficult for us, but we worked around it. We got through, so far we've gotten through 9 of the 10 modules, and we will be presenting our work and our final projects at our founders lunch, which is later this month. So we've stretched our timeline out to accommodate the time and the consistency that we've been running into issues with. And relatability, I mean, obviously you're working with some really complicated, complex ideas, and these are kids that are 10, 11, 12 years old. So finding a way to relate those concepts to their daily lives or to something that they were already interested in was really important. And for me personally, recruitment was tough because, again, I'd have girls who'd come every other week, or girls who would come for 2 weeks and then miss 4 weeks. So it was hard for me to keep and retain my recruitment level, but we worked through it. And I think I ended up with about 5 regulars, and they started trying to ask if they could bring their friends towards the end. So we kind of went through a slump, and then we bounced back a little bit when we got through some of the sports seasons and other things that were time conflicts. So again, every teacher loves to see these in action. It was really, really impressive to see how curious these girls were. They were proud of their knowledge, which Jenna also mentioned. They wanted to teach others. They wanted to take the concepts they were learning and show off to their friends and family and blow their minds too. One girl kept using that word. She said, "Oh my gosh, my mind is just blown. I want others to get their minds blown." And so she'd take the facts that she'd learn and go and share them with friends, which to me indicated another degree in confidence where, you know, middle school girls don't often do that. So that to me was a win, having her so excited to share her knowledge that she was learning. The relationships, again, I had already mentioned, these four have ended up aren't best friends. They get along, but they wouldn't choose to work with each other all the time. And by the end of this module, they were starting to really actually enjoy each other's company and get excited to work together in small groups, which I thought, again, for middle school girls is a big accomplishment. Their creativity and artistic talent were amazing. I have some examples of some of the work that they created that I kept because I just loved them so much. Their movie posters were great, although they were not sure what sci-fi was. I mentioned that in a minute. So kind of working through from the ground up in a lot of these concepts was necessary, but worthwhile in the long run, because once they latched onto a concept, their artistic talent would just take it to the moon and back. So love to watch what they created and see their creativity in action. And they're not afraid to address quantum in their lives. Our first session, they weren't going to get it, going to be hard, what it was. And by the end, finding like the nanobots playing basketball, you know, the most esoteric and creative ways to use quantum in their own lives. It's like they were no longer scared of it. They were excited to keep using it and keep talking about it. So that to me was another big win. And this curriculum is really good and steadily. You start small, literally, and you work your way up to the bigger concepts. The 3 tips and tricks that I would send you away with: use lots of analogies. There's some included in the curriculum that are very, very handy. Visuals, links to videos, that sort of thing. Those are really, really necessary to get the girls to kind of visualize some of these concepts that are more complex. And there's lots more out there on YouTube and in other, other areas where you can do a quick search and find 10 or 15 other videos that will piggyback onto the ones that are already included. So I encourage lots of analogies and videos, visuals, if you can find them. That kind of transitions into number 2, use models. The penny model, I know Jenna mentioned briefly, superposition is kind of a way to look at something where it can be in 2 states at once, heads or tails. That's a really good model that is included in the curriculum as well. And again, if you do a quick search, you can find lots of other ways to explain that. The thaumatrope is a good visual and model as well. And third, of course, my tip and trick for any upcoming teacher or person who's interested in doing anything new, just be excited about it. The kids pick up on your energy level so quickly. And if you are excited to be there, they will be excited to be there. One of my research experience for teacher cohorts mentioned once, you know, if you have the right attitude, it takes the bite out of whatever concept you're presenting. So the bite being, you know, it's something scary, something you're not familiar with, something that makes you nervous. If you are excited about it, those feelings will disappear very quickly for your girls. So just one of my other mantras is fake it till you make it. I have it on the back of my name tag that I make for myself here at the Boys and Girls Club, starting a new job. Fake it till you make it, and the girls will follow along with that energy level that you bring. So I encourage you to just be excited. And I think that's kind of it for my presentation. One other thing that was really fun for me to do in this particular program, because I'm not a quantum scientist, it was a really good exercise in admitting when you don't know something. Because again, as a teacher, if you're willing to admit that, oh, I've never thought of that before, let's look it up, then your class kind of builds a different relationship with you, and it strengthens the trust that they have in you, because you have demonstrated you're just another human being that we don't know everything. We have being excited. Google it. There's many opportunities in this curriculum to Google it right in the middle of a concept. So I encourage you just to take that time and admit when you are not quite sure about something. That is all I have for that. I'm going to stop sharing now. You can scan that QR code if you want me to leave it up for another 30 seconds or so. If you have any interest in getting in touch with me, that's just my Boys and Girls Club business card. So thank
Thank you so
you
much.
very much for.
Thank you, Hilary. And you will all get a copy of the slides. So you'll have Hilary's email and the QR code and all of that. I'm so struck by how you just put yourself in as a co-learner, how you modeled your own curiosity and that it's okay not to know things. It's just so interesting to hear how the questions were one of the things that would always run you over time, that the girls were just so curious and you wanted to encourage that as much as you could. So thank you for sharing all of that. If anyone has questions for Hilary, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. I know we got several kind of programmatic questions or other types of questions, project level questions that Susie, Brenda, Olivia have been answering throughout our hour, but we can touch on some of them again. I'm just going to read to you, Hilary, one question that came up earlier that you might be able to weigh in on, and then we'll see if any new questions come in. I think it was Adrian asked if there was a shorter program, are there one or two activities or things that you would recommend for someone with a shorter program? Because I know we presented this as 10 modules, once a week, 10 weeks. There's not always time for educators to do all of that. So I'm just curious, after you've done all these, is there one or two, Adrian asked, that you might suggest for a shorter program?
I would definitely start with module 1, and then I would encourage any modules that focus around an art project. I think the comic book was really valuable. The thaumatrope was really good and was a really valid example of a really tough concept. And I would towards the career module if you could. Those really highlighted other women in STEM, which helps these girls find their own STEM identity and not have that stigma around liking math or science. So I would definitely encourage you to check out the careers module as well. So if you had to take 2 or 3, I'd pick
Thank you. That's a great question. Anyone else have any questions for Hilary? So we did get a lot of various questions coming in about plans for replication, scaling, evaluation. Brenda, I'm wondering if I can put you on the spot briefly. I know you already answered via text, but for anyone who's not in the chat, who's also curious about just what you've been doing leading the light evaluation on our pilot efforts, and then you or Susie, any thoughts on next steps? And I can head off any specific questions about whether this curriculum is available as is. It's not yet because we're still piloting and evaluating, as Brenda will share in a minute. But I will put up in just a moment a couple of slides with what you'll be getting via email, with a lot of activity links, videos, many of the things Hilary just suggested, in case you want to implement any of those in the meantime. But Brenda, yes, please jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I'll start, and Susie, if you want to chime in, feel free. I think, as we've mentioned, we've really thought of this as a pilot project. It was a great opportunity from Montana State for us to be involved and to develop this and pilot it with the wonderful educators we have in Montana. So now we are looking at the data that we have collected, right? I mentioned we had a small focus group with the educators, and we had them fill out a short survey. So we're looking at that information and just hoping to be able to keep doing it in some way, in other states with other organizations. So we'd love to keep that conversation going, but we're still wrapping up this one. So I'm happy to. I will make a note of anyone who'd like us to follow up directly. I saw both Stephanie and Trisha's specific questions. We'll definitely follow up with them, but it's definitely something we'd like to keep doing. It seems to really go well. And I think the educators who piloted it were really the perfect group of educators, as you can probably tell from Hilary and Jennafer. And so we'd also like them to help us, in that process. Susie, did you want to add anything?
I think the only thing I would add, I appreciated that you kept the materials list quite small. So it was not anything that requires specialized materials or expensive materials. So I think, again, yeah, when you get all the information back and know if there are any changes to make, it should be pretty easy for other people to implement the program wherever they are.
Thank you both. Thank you for that great question. And I think we got most of the other questions answered in the chat, but if we didn't, feel free to put your questions back in. I'm just going to share with you briefly back into the PowerPoint, since everyone, when you get the recording after this webinar, in the next couple of days, you'll get Hilary's slides, Jenna's slides, so that you can get all of their information. And either while the curriculum itself, we're still, finalizing and hoping that eventually it'll be something that we can share out fully. We didn't want to leave you hanging with World Quantum Day coming up. We didn't want you to hear about all these awesome activities from Hilary and Jenna and not be able to implement anything on your own. That's just not a good use of an hour spent with us. So we did pull out a few different curricular resources, activities, and videos that are all linked to instructions. EPIC, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that acronym correctly, but they have a great resources that we drew on for Quantum Girls and link to a lot of awesome activities around superposition and all of that. We included links to some of the NASA printables that we mentioned. Although this curriculum, as Susie mentioned, we focused on low cost, hands-on, like arts and crafts type materials. We didn't want to assume that programs would need one-to-one devices for girls in order to do this. But there are a lot of great digital games and free digital resources if you do have access to technology for your students. So we included a couple links to those, some websites that you might want to check out. And then I think it was Hilary that mentioned like videos being like a great resource, seeing some of the models, seeing the visual elements. So we pulled a couple of different videos. I think the Mission Unstoppable, What is a Quantum Computer? If you haven't seen that, is a great fun video. And I believe that one shows the penny example that Hilary mentioned. And then we also linked to some of these women role model videos that folks mentioned as well. So we just have a couple of more minutes. So I want to make sure before we run out of time that I thank Hilary, Jenna, and Susie once again for sharing your experiences with Quantum Girls, making this webinar possible. We will, if you liked this webinar, we'll put some links in the chat of how you can support NGCP to lead future webinars like this one. We'll pop a link to our next webinar in the chat, and we'll also put a link to our post-webinar survey. And that's another good place where you can tell us, like, I want to keep in touch about your next steps with Quantum Girls. I want to know about these specific elements that maybe we didn't touch on in this webinar around scaling and the research side of next steps. So feel free to take that survey and provide us with all of your questions, ideas, and feedback there. And we will keep in touch with all of you. You'll all get access to the recording and the slides. So thank you so much for being here. I'm just double checking. There's no last questions. Nope. Just appreciation to Hilary and Jenna, which I would like to echo. So thank you all for being here. And in advance, happy World Quantum Day in a couple of weeks. Take care.